This is the second in our little series on pre-railroad industry in and around Greensburg, Pennsylvania. We had been talking about Dutchtown, and this is an old woodcut done in the year 1840. And you can see the area we've been talking about. This area here in the foreground of the town, this would have been old Dutchtown. And it's seen from up on the hill of what's now thought of as Ludwig. It mentions Bunker Hill. That was before Ludwig really had much identity in 1840. I can almost guarantee you that this is a totally hand-done work with no photography involved. Photography was only invented in Europe in the year 1839, the year previous to when this was made. So I think we can be assured that this was a totally hand-done work. All I did to it was clean it up a bit and put some color on it. But it gives a picture of the town, and Dutchtown in particular that we're talking about. In the pre-railroad era, this was the old Dutchtown. This would have been Otterman Street coming up here, up to Main Street with the courthouse up here. And Pittsburgh Street would have been over here, coming up. And we move on. Here we have something we saw in the last little production. It is right in the heart of Dutchtown. This was the Coons Tannery, and this is where they lived. And this was the Weldy's house. And I did make a point to say much of the production was what we'd now think of as a cottage industry. And this would definitely be an exception to that. This would be a regular manufactory where no one lived. Tanneries were foul-smelling places that no one wanted to live. Down here at the Weldy's, old Jacob Weldy lived very close to where he worked. He worked at the tannery at times. He worked as a skin dresser. That shows up in the 1799 census. He also worked at home. He was a breeches maker, making the old leather breeches that the frontiersmen wore. And also at home, he had a carding machine. He advertised that in the newspaper, in the Farmer's Register. It was probably a machine that was made right up the street at his neighbor's place, Jacob Hugh Gus, whose place we'll see. Hugh Gus was a great inventor, and he even patented a new type of carding machine. The carding was something that was done for getting the wool prepared for spinning it into a thread or yarn. It was a system of combing it in a way that all the threads or fibers would be oriented in the same direction, and that made it much easier to spin. And the next frame will show that not everything was always going well at the tannery. Apparently John Coons occasionally had problems with his help, and we're talking about an apprentice named John Smith who ran away from him. The Apprentice System was something that came from Europe, very much as the old system of the cottage industry and the Apprentice System. The apprentices were indentured to their master by a legal agreement, which was written and signed. And if an apprentice should run away, it was a matter of legality that you could get the guy back if you could find him. John Coons actually had been sheriff in the county previously. And the apprentice system did, at times, lend itself to abuse. What I mean by that is that there were times when boundaries would be overstepped. Here you see a guy, this Larimer, got a little child, a toddler, 3 years old, from the county director of the poor, and had this little kid indentured so that he would have to live with his master and pretty much give him free labor until he was 21 years old. And in this case, his mother managed to steal him away from the guy who had got him indentured as an apprentice at 3 years old, or perhaps earlier. If the apprentice system worked well, it was actually a mutually beneficial arrangement for all involved. The young boy could most often would live in the house of his master and get free lodging and meals and a small stipend, not a whole lot. But it would sometimes happen that an apprentice would actually literally become part of the family if the master had a good-looking young daughter and they got along well with the apprentice. Sometimes there was a marriage. This is an old woodcut from Europe showing how work was done, very much at home. This is a carpenter, and his wife is right with him here with her distaff and the little child on the floor with the basket of probably the tow that was being spun into a bit of yarn. This was across the street. This was Christopher Troubies' horse mill and pottery. We don't have many descriptions of these people, but in the case of Troubie, we do. The brown-eyed Christopher Troubie, with brown hair, a long face, and 5 foot 9 inches in height, was both living and dead on the 20th day of February, 1802, at the age of 66. We are further told that he wore red-topped boots and wore his hair in a black silk bag. And the Troubies earned a good bit down over the hill, down to Jack's Run, and Christopher Troubie even had a sawmill down there. This is the kind of stuff they made at the pottery. Very utilitarian objects, including things for the brew and whiskey that was made mostly in the other side of town. We'll see that later. And Jacob Hugh Gus lived up the street on what we know as the corner of Pennsylvania and West Pittsburgh Street, on the northwest corner. He made clocks and other inventions. As I mentioned, the carding machine. This is where Hugh Gus had a mill outside of Greensburg. The green line is the Route 30 bypass. The red line is Mount Pleasant Road. And he put in his mill the first steam engine, we're told, west of the Alleghenies in 1822. Now, you can believe that or not. I really don't want to contest that, but that's one of the claims. The next steam engine in town came when Eli Calder put a steam engine in his mill in town in 1826. And we're coming to a point where I should shut this down and say so long until next time.